stole it from us. No, Master. Yes, precious, you're a liar. And a thief. No. Murderer. Who'd you? Where would you be without me? Ellen, I saved us. We survived because of me.
Hey guys, what's happening? Niyat here with Film Comics Explained. I'm in New Zealand at the moment, exploring some of the locations where the Lord of the Rings trilogy was filmed. Given this, I thought it would be fun for us to take a look at Gollum, the saddest character in the Lord of the Rings series, written by J.R.R. Tolkien. In this video, we're going to explore his origins, the character's history throughout the expanded universe, and his adaptation to screen by Peter Jackson. Originally called Sméagol, the name Gollum was derived from the sound of the disgusting, gurgling, choking cough he developed over the course of his ridiculously long and twisted life. At the time of his death, Sméagol was about 589 years old, a remarkable age for a creature that was once a hobbit, and his longevity was fueled by the corruption of the Ring of Power, which deformed and twisted both his body and mind. In the first edition of The Hobbit, Gollum didn't appear quite as wretched or as bound to the ring as he would later be described. Tolkien eventually revised this characterization to fit the concept of the ruling ring, developed during the writing of The Lord of the Rings, explaining the version given in the first edition was a lie that Bilbo made to tell the dwarves and Gandalf. I also thought it was interesting that Tolkien made no reference to his size, leading several illustrators to portray him as being very large. Tolkien realized the omission and clarified in later editions that he was of average hobbit size, and in The Lord of the Rings, there is a reference to Sam being little less in height than he was. In the books, Gollum is described as either dark, bone white, or palish yellow. At one point, the men of Ithilien mistake his silhouette seen from a distance for a tailless black squirrel, while Gorbag and Shagrat described him as a dark fellow. In a manuscript written to guide illustrators to the appearance of his characters, Tolkien explained this confusion by saying that Gollum had pale skin, but wore dark clothes and was often seen in poor light. Long after, but still very long ago, there lived by the banks of the great river on the edge of Wilderland, a clever-handed and quiet-footed little people. I guess they were of hobbit kind, akin to the fathers of the Stoors, for they loved the river, and often swam in it, or made little boats of reeds. There was among them a family of high repute, for it was large and wealthier than most, and it was ruled by a grandmother of the folk, stern and wise in old lore, such as they had. The most inquisitive and curious-minded of the family was called Smeagol. He was interested in roots and beginnings. He dived into deep pools, he burrowed under trees and growing plants, he tunneled into green mounds, and he ceased to look up at the hilltops or the leaves on trees, or the flowers opening in the air. His head and eyes were downward. He had a friend called Deagle of similar sort, sharp-eyed but not so quick and strong. On a time, they took a boat and went down to the Gladden Fields, where there were great beds of iris and flowering reeds. There Smeagol got out and went nosing about the banks, but Deagle sat in the boat and fished. Suddenly a great fish took his hook, and before he knew where he was dragged out and down into the water, to the bottom. Then he let go of his line, for he thought he saw something shining in the riverbed, and holding his breath he grabbed at it. Then up he came spluttering, with weeds in his hair and a handful of mud, and he swam to the bank, and behold, when he washed the mud away, there in his hand lay a beautiful golden ring, and it shone and glittered in the sun, so that his heart was glad. But Smeagol had been watching him from behind a tree, and as Deagle gloated over the ring, Smeagol came softly up behind. "Give us that, Deagle, my love," said Smeagol, over his friend's shoulder. "Why?" said Deagle. "Because it's my birthday, my love, and I wants it," said Smeagol. "I don't care," said Deagle. "I have given you a present already, more than I could afford. I found this, and I'm going to keep it." "Oh, are you indeed, my love?" said Smeagol, and he caught Deagle by the throat and strangled him, because the gold looked so bright and beautiful. Then he put the ring on his finger. Once a Stoorish hobbit, one of the three early hobbit types, including the Harfoots and the Fallowhides, and born in the year 2430 of the Third Age, Smeagol spent the early years of his living life with his extended family. Smeagol was a great survivor that had a very keen eye, and his quickness of hand made him an excellent fisherman. He could spot and catch fish in almost any level of light and water, and this would later enable him to fish in the underground lake of the Misty Mountains for centuries in almost complete darkness. Around 2463 of the Third Age, he would become the fourth ring-bearer of the One Ring, after Sauron, Isildur, and Deagle. No one ever found out what had become of Deagle. He was murdered far from home, and his body was hidden. But Smeagol returned alone, and he found that none of his family could see him when he was wearing the ring. He was very pleased with his discovery, and he concealed it, and he used it to find out secrets, and he put his knowledge to crooked and malicious uses. He became sharp-eyed and keen-eared for all that was hurtful. The ring had given him power according to his stature. It is not to be wondered at that he became very unpopular and was shunned when visible by all his relations. They kicked him and he bit their feet. He took to thieving and going about muttering to himself and gurgling in his throat. So they called him Gollum and cursed him and told him to go far away, and his grandmother, desiring peace, expelled him from the family and turned him out of her hall. He wandered in loneliness, weeping a little for the hardness of the world, and he journeyed up the river till he came to a stream that flowed from the mountains, and he went that way. He caught fish in deep pools with invisible fingers and ate them raw. One day it was very hot, and as he was bending over a pool, he felt a burning on the back of his head, and a dazzling light from the water pained his wet eyes. He wondered at it, for he had almost forgotten about the sun. Then, for the last time, he looked up and shook his fist at her. But as he lowered his eyes, he saw far above the tops of the misty mountains, out of which the stream came, and he thought suddenly, it would be cool and shady under those mountains. The sun could not watch me there. The roots of those mountains must be roots indeed. There must be great secrets buried there which have not been discovered since the beginning. So he journeyed by night into the highlands, and he found a little cave out of which the dark stream ran, and he wormed his way like a maggot into the heart of the hills and vanished out of all knowledge. The ring went into the shadows with him, and even the Maker, when his power had begun to grow again, could learn nothing of it. The ring's malignant influence twisted his body as well as his mind and prolonged his life far beyond its natural limits. While he began by calling the ring his birthday present as justification for killing his cousin, his transformation would lead to him calling it his precious. Developing a fear and hatred for the sun, Smeagol would then spend the next 400 years in the Misty Mountains, living on bats, goblins, and raw fish that he caught from his small rowboat. His love of eating creatures that were still moving was so great that he even made a song about raw fish that he used as a riddle to Bilbo, and would later sing a longer version of this to Frodo.
What's it doing? Stupid fat hobbit! It ruins it!
Unlike any other ring bearer before him, during his time under the ring's influence, he developed a sort of dissociative identity disorder, which I think had more to do with the centuries he spent alone while it corrupted his mind. Smeagol was his good personality that represented his life before the ring as a hobbit that understood friendship and love. Gollum, on the other hand, was his bad personality that was a slave to the ring and its influence, willing to kill anyone that tried to take it away from him. Other characters would also catch wind of his dual personalities, most notably Samwise Gamgee, who named his good personality Slinker due to his eagerness to please, and his bad personality Stinker. These two personalities would often quarrel for control through Smeagol not having anyone else to speak to, as Tolkien had previously described, and this love-hate relationship also mirrored Gollum's love and hatred for the ring and for himself. In July of the year 2941, during the quest of Erebor, the hobbit Bilbo Baggins stumbled upon the subterranean lake on which he lived and found Gollum's ring, which he had lost while squabbling with a goblin in the network of caves leading to the lake, though I think it would be more appropriate to say that the ring abandoned Gollum, for it was known to have a will of its own. After the infamous game of riddles, during which Gollum was unaware of his loss, Gollum refused to show Bilbo the promised way out and plotted to murder him. But when he went to use his precious, he found that it was gone. Realizing that Bilbo had the ring, Gollum broke into a rage and began to chase him in the tunnels, where Bilbo would inadvertently stumble across the ring's power of invisibility, which enabled him to follow Gollum back to the entrance of the cave. Though Bilbo first thought to kill Gollum with his new advantage, he was overcome with pity and decided to jump over him and escape instead. As Bilbo ran away, Gollum would angrily cry out that Baggins was a thief that both Smeagol and Gollum would hate forever. Without the ring's power of invisibility, Gollum was initially afraid of following Bilbo out of fear of being caught by the goblins, but eventually mustered up the courage to leave the mountains and pursue him. But due to the fact that some years had already passed by this stage, and because the trail had gone cold, he instead made his way south to Mordor, where all evil was being drawn to at the time. While he managed to find the secret stairs located near Minas Morgul, and even survived an encounter with Shelob, he was captured on his return and taken to the dungeons of Barad-dûr, where he was forced to reveal what he knew about the ring and its new ring bearer to Sauron under torture. Gollum was then freed, with his torturers hoping that his obsession with the ring would lead him to finding Bilbo, and that the ring in turn would corrupt him to make his way back to Sauron. But as he travelled from Barad-dûr, Aragorn captured him and brought him to Gandalf, who also interrogated him about Sauron's nefarious activities. Though he was then placed in the care of the Sylvan Elves living in Thranduil's kingdom in Mirkwood, Gollum was able to escape undetected and began making his way to the Shire via the mines of Moria. Unable to make it out of the East Gate, there he waited until he got lucky when the Fellowship of the Ring passed through. Gollum met and started following the Fellowship in Moria and was spotted by Frodo on several occasions. In the year 1319 of the Third Age, the Fellowship lost Gandalf to the depths as he fought the mighty Balrog to protect them, and while he kept his distance, Gollum continued to follow them out of the mines. It's unknown how he crossed the bridge of Khazad-dûm, which had been destroyed by Gandalf, but he came with them to Lorien, and then followed their boats down Anduin to Rhoris, where he pursued Frodo and Sam across the Emyn Muil as they began their quest towards Mordor. Seeing an opportunity to reclaim the ring, Gollum attacked Sam and nearly strangled him, but was stopped by Frodo, who threatened to end him with Sting, the elvish blade that Gollum recognized belonged to its former owner and his nemesis, Bilbo. While Sam tied an elven rope to his neck, which inflicted great pain on Gollum, taking pity on the creature, Frodo made him swear to help them. Agreeing to the oath, Gollum swore by the precious and was released, where the unlikely company, guided by Gollum, made its way to the Black Gate of Mordor. For that moment, a change, which lasted for some time, came over him. He spoke with less hissing and whining, and he spoke to his companions direct, not to his precious self. He would cringe and flinch if they stepped near him or made any sudden movement, and he avoided the touch of their elven cloaks, but he was friendly and indeed pitifully anxious to please. He would cackle with laughter and caper if any jest was made, or even if Frodo spoke kindly to him, and weep if Frodo rebuked him. It's important to note that Frodo's kindness brought out the Sméagol personality, and the two had a strange sort of bond from both having been ring bearers. In Gollum, Frodo saw his possible future, and so wanted to save him so he could save himself. But everyone apart from Gandalf, Bilbo and Frodo, who had felt pity and a measure of compassion for him, instantly hated him, from the orcs of Cirith Ungol to the rangers of Ithilien, who perceived him as filthy, slimy and sneaky. When the Black Gate was finally reached and found to be well guarded, Gollum convinced them not to go that way as they would surely be caught by Sauron. Despite Sam's suspicions, Frodo agreed to follow him, but while Gollum had been fishing in a nearby lake, Frodo and Sam were caught by Faramir. In a bid to save the life of Gollum, Frodo allowed Faramir to capture him, but now feeling betrayed by his master, Smeagol allowed Gollum, whom he'd previously banished, to retake control. Though Faramir soon released them and warned the company that the direction they were going was treacherous, the trio began crossing the Morgul Vale, after which they began climbing the stairs of Cirith Ungol in the Mountains of Shadow. It's here that Gollum visited the great spider Shelob, child of the epic Ungoliant, and offered her the lives of the hobbits in return for the ring he so desired. It's unknown how Gollum managed to form an alliance with the Great Spider, as she was known to devour anything that stepped into her domain, with the exception of Sauron, with whom she also shared an allegiance with. But just as Frodo had warned him, Gollum's betrayal of his oath ultimately led to his undoing. Managing to escape from their lair and pass through Cirith Ungol, Frodo and Sam came against all odds to the fiery volcano known as Mount Doom, where the ring had been forged by the Dark Lord Sauron. Gollum followed them still, seeking a chance to surprise them and take the ring from Frodo by force, and when they had reached their destination, he attacked, but failed to get the ring. Sam, who had hated Gollum on sight, initially tried to kill him, but he relented out of sheer pity and disgust, turning his back on the beaten creature. Moments later, Frodo made his way to the edge of the Crack of Doom, but unwilling to destroy the ring, and now corrupted by its power, claimed it for himself and put it on. Gollum then attacked the hobbits again and knocked Sam out with a rock. While Frodo was invisible, Gollum was able to track his footprints and jump on him, where the two fought, leading to Gollum biting off Frodo's finger with the ring on it. It's here where the kindness of all who spared his life was rewarded, for Gollum then teetered on the edge of the great pit, lost his balance and fell in fire, where the ring along with Gollum were consumed in the molten lava. Had Gollum not lived to play this final part, there was a good chance that Sauron would have regained his ring, as he knew where Frodo was as soon as he put it on. Years after Gollum's death, Frodo would forgive him, as Gandalf had told Frodo that Gollum was not actually an evil being deserving death, but was only a poor being, bound to the ring's will, and that Frodo's fate would have been like Gollum's if he'd kept the ring. Smeagol undoubtedly suffered the most from the One Ring, as for almost all of his unnaturally long life he was tortured by it into gradual mental destruction. And ironically, the one being who suffered the most from the Ring of Power was the one who managed to destroy it in the end.
Listening? You're a liar. And a thief. No. Murderer.
In the Peter Jackson film trilogy, Gollum is a CGI creature performed by the legendary Andy Serkis, who also provided the voices of some of the Nazgul and Orcs. Barely glimpsed in the Fellowship of the Ring, it would become a central character in The Two Towers and The Return of the King. The groundbreaking CGI character was built around the voice, movements and expressions of Serkis by using a motion capture suit, which recorded his movements and applied them to the character. The image of Serkis was then replaced with Gollum's, giving the appearance of a small, skeletal and gaunt creature with large, beady eyes and small strands of brown hair. In The Return of the King, Serkis himself appears in a flashback scene as Smeagol before his degeneration into Gollum. This scene was originally earmarked for The Two Towers, but held back because it was felt that audiences would relate better to Smeagol once they were more familiar with the creature he became. This, in my opinion, was a wise choice, as the scene which kicks off The Return of the King, following the harrowing Gollum song sang by Emiliana Torrini at the conclusion of The Two Towers, is heartbreaking to watch, and this would have been lessened had we not seen how much the ring had broken him. Well, that's all for today, folks. A huge thanks to everyone who requested we explore Gollum, as featured in The Lord of the Rings. Don't forget to hit subscribe and click the notification icon to stay up to date on all my content, and if there's anything else you'd like to request, please don't hesitate to ask. As always, it's been a pleasure. Niyat here with Film and Comics Explained. Thanks for stopping by.
They're thieves. They're thieves. They're filthy little thieves. We hate them. It's ours it is, and we want it.
Release him, or I'll cut your throat.